Back again, another tier list. Milano Seamen this time. I've been quite critical of Milano Seamen over the last few years because of some certain choices that they made, but it's actually a pretty solid group. So we got their 10 imports here. If you like Brazilian players, this is a video for you. But we're just going to jump straight into it. If you haven't seen the last one, I got Madrid Bravos one. It's exactly the same format, all your left, starter, role player, bench player, reserve. So all you left obviously reserves those kind of guys that I consider to be in the elite category. Starter, meaning they would probably start on most teams. Role player, being a role player, but it's not a derogatory way. It's just that's how they are. You know, to fit a certain scheme in a certain position or a certain role within a team. Bench player speaks for itself. Reserve speaks for itself. So this isn't meant to be rude to any of these players. I'm a scout and I'm an evaluator, so I have to be strict with this and give fair opinions because a bad analyst sits on the fence, and I'm not a bad analyst. So let's just get straight into it. The first one I wanted to put in is the Americans. Zachary Blair is an absolute fucking savage. Like, the man knows how to play football. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds silly, but he's everywhere. Just take a look at his stats in this season. He had 2 pass breakups, 2 blocked kicks, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, loads of tackles just everywhere. But if you look at his last year with Istanbul, I think it's even better. 6 block kicks, 2 forced fumbles, an interception, 1.5 sacks, over 100 tackles. Like, he's just a machine. He's everywhere. He's anywhere that you need him to be. He's a two-time All-Star, and he's coming into his 28th year of, he's 28. So he's coming into his physical prime, and I think that he's kind of proved already that he needs to be an all-ELF player. Like, he's been there twice, and unfortunately for him, he's been on bad teams every year. Like, he's been with the Surge, he's been with the Rams, he's been with the Centurions, and none of those teams were great. So you could argue, he's padding the stats on some bad teams. He's a defender, he's going to get more time to play, but I wouldn't make that argument personally. I think that he is legit, as you can see with his impact in special teams and just all over the field. So I'm very comfortable putting Zachary Blair up in the all ELF. He's going to be a really, really solid leadership wise. You can see he's just a guy. Like, you can see him after the post games, talking about the games, talking about his teammates, and he is just a really good captain material. That's how I see him as being. From one Zach to another, Zach Bronkhurst, the quarterback this year for the Milano Seamen. I have questions on Zach's kind of where he fits into this league. I've been kind of critical in it, his overall ability. He is a big guy, 6'3", 225. Accuracy concerns are a thing, 56% consistently. He played 4 years in college. I'm only going to count 3 of them because one of them was he had 2 attempts at passing. Not really much to go off of. And even still, to be fair, he went 1 out of 2 completion, but for 1 touchdown. So the later in 3 years, 56% every single year. He doesn't have too many interceptions, but he's not, I don't think, a guy that's going to set the world on fire. He's mobile, has a decent run to run. He did have some rushing yards to those numbers, but I just think he lacks kind of like an elite arm in terms of velocity and distance. He doesn't have a fuck you arm, that's for sure. And he kind of has some pocket presence issues. He gets a little bit twitchy, as do a lot of quarterbacks in the left, but I think that with his less mobile ability than someone like Zach Edwards, I don't think he's going to have the same success, because I think Zach's more Edwards is more athletic. Both of them are called Zach. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to put him as like a role player, because I think that he's going to be short passes. Some of the guys we'll see in a minute, and a lot of handoffs to someone we'll see in a minute. So I can't see him being the focal point of the offense, even though he is the quarterback. And I don't think I would start him over like 10 or so of the quarter. But he's probably, for me, just outside the top 10, top 12 kind of range as quarterbacks. So I'm going to put him in role player. And I think that he could do a job if the offense around him is solid. but I think he needs that offense to be solid. Next up, Patrick Carr, running back out of Houston and formerly of Colorado. I have feelings on American running backs. I don't think they work particularly well because of the reliance in front of them on the offensive line. It just costs so much on the E spots to have an offensive line to support an American running back. We saw the Kings try to do it last year with McShane. It just didn't work. We've seen it's too strict of regulations, I think, to get away with a pure American back. Having said that, Patrick Carr is a really good back. You know, in college he finished his career with 1,546 yards, 13 touchdowns, averaging 6 yards a carry. So he is legit. He's had CFL runs and NFL runs, touched both of them. So as far as a running back goes, he's probably one of the best. So I'm going to put him probably as starter. But it's just whether or not the offense will be successful running with an American running back is a different story. This is based purely just on who I think they are as an individual athlete. And I see him as probably a top 5 back. Probably top, he could probably see top 1, but there hasn't been that much tape of him because he was injured in some years and he has good balance and good cuts, but he lacks elite speed. And there's questions on his durability and his fitness, having not played for a while, because his last game was when it was Ottawa Red Blacks in 2021. He was on a practice squad. Before that, 2020 with the Seahawks, also on a practice squad. So realistically, he's not had full season since college, which was in 2019. So coming off maybe a 5-year layoff is certainly significant. I know he's 28, so he's still got some mileage in his body, but it's definitely a concern, man. Like, it really is. So for me, he's a starter as a player, but I think that will he finish the year? Maybe if he has injury issues, I'm not sure. And if they do, I don't think they should go for an American running back. I think they should get an American receiver, just because it requires less of a need. And I think that is huge, especially with the limited spots and A spots. If you're unaware, 4 Americans, 2 either side of the ball, 6 Europeans that are not in the country of your residence. So for Milan, they get 6 non-Italian players. And they've spent most of them on Brazilians, which we'll get to now. Let's go through it now. So, D-tackle, Gabriel Montagna. He is a beast. I actually really like this signing. I was a little bit critical of Milan at the first part, and then they signed Gabriel, and I was like, oh, all right. Like, he played for the Styron Black Panthers in France, and he affects the pass like a D-tackle I don't think I've ever seen before. Like, he's getting so many tips at the line. He's getting so many disruptions. He has a pretty decent bag in terms of his moveset. Like, he lacks a bit of a secondary move. He'll hit one move and then he'll kind of just if he gets stopped, he gets stopped. But he has strong hands, great awareness for the football and for the ball carrier around him too. So I'm gonna put him in all year left. I think he could legit be a really good player. There's a bit of a lack of D tackles at year left. You've got Evans Yoruba in Munich. You've got Azan Zetterberg, who was at the Surge, who still gets unsigned for some reason. And then you got Jason in Ryan Fire. So there is an opening for another elite D tackle in that conversation. I think Gabriel could be in that conversation, especially if he gets a few huge plays, like a few pick sixes or something as a D tackle. That'd be insane. That definitely would sway some of the voters. So I like him as an all year left talent. Like, this defense last year was torrid, fucking awful. just to be, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, it was bad. It was the worst in your left history. So adding these two, it's a really, really good start. We'll go to another Brazilian. We'll cover those guys at the moment. So we have 3 offensive linemen to choose from. We'll go for Murilo Silva first. He has been an all-year left player in 2021 with the Rocklaw Panthers. Strong hands, aggressive, creates holes. He's not like an elite puller. He can get out in space. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't say he's like an elite puller. But he's a beast. I really, really like Murilo. He can play either side on guard or tackle. He's better as a guard in my opinion because he's 6'1", about 300 pounds, so he would be kind of a smaller tackle. But for me, he's a starter. and he could edge into all ELF. It's kind of a difficult one because there are so many good guards in the ELF at the moment. But Murillo wouldn't be opposed to him being in either of those. I think Murillo starts at quite a few teams. And he's proved he can do it in Europe, which I think is a big thing. Like, some people don't really think it is, but I think it is. When players come from America, I think their expectations are that they're going to be a superstar. Doesn't always work out like that. So, or, you know, not just in Americans, but in South Americans and in Oceania, some of them think, it's Europe, I can dominate Europe. And then they get a bit of a reality check. So, it is quite a big step for some of these people, especially in the Brazilian leagues. But Murillo is someone I like. For one lineman to the next, Leonardo Fonseca. So he is, for me, a tackle. Pure tackle. That's what he played last year. I actually go advise you to watch some of his tape because some of the fields in Brazil make me laugh. Like, they're not in a horrible way, but there's like lakes in the middle of the field in Brazil. And it makes sense, right? It's a rainforest, quite a lot of it. So I can't be expecting it to be, outstanding. But it's pretty funny. Some of the players he's blocking some guys, they just fall over because of the water in their feet. But he's super aggressive, long frame, pretty good puller. He does kind of lean into the D-line quite heavily. Like if there was a D-lineman with a pretty good push and pull, he'd be fucked. Just to be honest. But yeah, he's 26, 300 pounds, huge, just hulking, huge guy. So for me, I think he kind of lacks some of the footwork of someone like Murillo. So I'm going to put him in as a role player. He is a very capable tackle, but I need to see him do more in pass coverage. Like, he is, for me, just at the moment from the Timber Rex, he's a run stopper, and he's a run guy rather, and he's a tackle, which could be, that could cause some issues because he doesn't look like he has elite speed from the stuff that I've seen so far. So he'll massively help out with Patrick. I think, like I said, with the amount of investment you need for an American back, it looks like they're doing that with the tackles. So, here they are. So they'll have Murillo and Fonseca there, and then they'll have Lucas Soares da Silva, another Brazilian, also the offensive tackle. He's young. He's only 23, 6'5", 320. He anchors well, strong hands, also an aggressive run player. Kind of slow feet, and also have doubts on his pass pro as well. Now, these two guys, both of them, I think, are run tackles. Maybe they'll slip one into guard. Maybe they'll slip one maybe into center. I doubt they'll move one all the way from tackle to center. But if they were going to, it would be probably Murillo. He's only 6'1", he's 6'6", he's 6'5". So, for me, I'd probably also put him in role player. In terms of, between these two, I'd probably give the edge to Leonardo. He's just a bit longer. He's only an inch taller, but his arms are so long that I think I give... his punch separation is excellent. So for me, these guys both kind of sit here. They'll be the tackles on either side, and I have doubts both of their pass. So when they come against an elite rusher, if Nicholas Gustav comes back for the Raiders, they're in some serious trouble. But they do face kind of an easier run of things. Sistan Javali might also be an issue if he kind of comes off the edge quite a lot as an outside linebacker at the surge. So if these two are dealt with speed, I think it could cause issues for them. Hence the role player title for him. But let's move into someone I was very, very excited about. I talked to him yesterday. Big fan of Tommy Wilson. I think that he straight away slips into a possible all-ELF player. Ridiculously fast. Runs an unofficial 4.27, which is unbelievable. I know it was lasered in Milan, but it's lasered and it's also in Milan, so I was a little bit more. It was the last season he did that. But I don't have any doubt that he's a high 4.2 and low 4.3 guy. He's a former track and field athlete, so I don't have any doubts that he can do it. He's super athletic. Really pretty good hands for someone who's only played for 2 seasons. He played for Dresden last year, Oxford Saints before that. His awareness, his play speed is a little bbit unpolished. Sometimes those routes don't come in at 4.2 speed. I would like to see a little bit more burst off of his release in and out of his breaks. And then kind of some of the football awareness, sitting in cover, finding the spaces in coverage. He doesn't have that at the moment because he's only played 2 seasons. When he gets that, he's a fucking issue. As a returner, he's a fucking issue. So For me, he absolutely has potential to be an all he left. The only issue is, because of the lack of American receiver, he's going to have an American on it most times, unless he comes into the slot. And he still might have an American on it now, too. They'll have Flores Calderon probably on one side, unconfirmed, and the receiver they'll have on the other. They have a couple of options. And then maybe Tommy in the slot. But for me, he can play either as well, which does add to his value. But if he can come against an American that doesn't maybe have the same speed as him, then he'll be fine. But needs to see his physicality on the line. There's still a lot of question marks, but I don't doubt that he could be a potential all ELF player. Like, he's got that ability, and he's been invited to CFL global stuff, so he might not even be there. Like, I think he probably will end up being there just because of his unpolishedness, but sky is the limit for Tommy. I really do think he's a legit athlete, like all Europe athlete. Maximin Defasis is next, French safety. He is 31. He is a good size, 6 foot, 203. I think that he has a lot of special team value. I think that he has pretty damn good run value, like as far as it coming into the box. He's a little slower. I think that his breaks aren't the elite level, and I think that he would fit nicely as like a nickel or like a Luke Glenn kind of role where he comes into and affects the run and stop. But he does have, I think he could be a special teams guy. Like, he has a lot of blocked field goals or block punts, and is very effective on getting downfield. So I think that for me, he will also come in as this kind of role player, and it's good to see the investment on defense, because that Zero Esports actually had somewhat of a relationship with Milan last season, unofficially, and I mentioned this, so I was like, the defense isn't good enough, and they got quite defensive about it. But it's good to see them actually invest in their defense, safeties and D tackles, linebackers. So it's good to actually see that investment. I think that he does fit into this role player there. Is he going to come in and cover someone like Marco Schneider in a slot? I don't think so, but he does have experience with the Berlin Thunder. So I think that he has more experience and more knowledge than most of these guys do about Europe. So I think that he would fit good into that role. Marquise Manning, next up. I was a big fan when Marquise went to Milan. I think that he is a severely underrated corner. Probably one of the most underrated. I think he's a top 10 to like top 5 kind of guy. I need to break down and watch his tape maybe for another video, but he plays the ball well. He has got good hands. I think that he can be a little bit more physical with coverage though. Like, he doesn't necessarily impose his will on people, so I'd like to see him do that a little bit more. As far as him as a starter though, I'll probably put him about here. I think he starts over quite a few corners in the ELF. Yeah, so I'm happy with him being there. I think that he has all ELF potential as well. It's just hard to shine when he was on such a bad team last year. He was one of the only Americans that stayed like consistent without injuries, because Stewart, the safety, had a few injuries. Marquise was pretty solid throughout the year. I think he also struggled one or two, but I think that rounds out our 10, the Milano 10. Just to round it out and get a full picture, Zachary Blair, Gabriel Montagno, Tommy Wilson, I consider them to be potential all ELFs for their special teams value and their tackling machine effects in the run and pass, and then for special teams and just pure game-breaking ability at speed. He could be... the GFL stats are down at the moment, so I can't tell you the exact numbers. But when Austin Mitchell went injured and Tommy Wilson stepped into that number 1 role, he was an absolute fucking savage. Patrick Carr, Murilo Silva, Marquise Manning, as people I would consider starters across the league. Doubts on fitness and durability. Some size concerns and some length, and then some of the more physicality and hands work stuff. So there are questions on those guys as well. And then role players, Bronkhurst, just ability to be a championship quarterback, I'm not so sure. These dudes would be pass coverage and footwork ability, and then coverage, but he does have special teams value as well. So overall, I'm happy with that. I think Milan have done a good job in their 10. I don't consider any of their guys to be like bench players or reserves. So I would say they've done pretty well. I think they've done better than some other teams we'll get to later in a week. But Overall, I'd probably give them like a B plus to an A minus. Honestly, they've done a damn good job. And historically, sometimes they haven't done impressive work, so this year is definitely good. If you're a Milano fan, feel free to hate me in the comments in Italian or English. You can pick your poison on that one. And if you enjoyed, subscribe. Nearly up to 1,000 subscribers. And much appreciated. I'll see you later, and goodbye.